please ensure that your phones are switched off. And when you're speaking, could you make sure that the microphones are on and speak into them, please. And just to remind you that there will be a recording being made of what is said and done tonight. Prayers are taken by the Rector of Horsham. And can I just ask that when we've had prayers, would we just stand for, I'd ask you to stand for just a few moments in silence to remember our friend Chris O'Leary. So prayers by Canon. Lisa, please.
So I thought today I'd read a Christmas poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It's called Christmas Bells. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. Amen.
Good. Right, we have apologies for absence. I've got Andrew Baldwin, councillors Andrew Baldwin, John Blackall, Alan Britton, Christine Costin, Philip Circus, Tony Hogden, Tim Lloyd, Colin Minto, Jim Sampson, John Milne, and Francis Haig. I'm not aware of any other apologies having been tendered. Declarations of members' interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Yeah, Tony, Councillor Beavers.
Thank you, Chairman. Under item 6B, I'm a volunteer at Horsham Citizens Advice, so I've got an interest in the community advice agreement, non-prejudicial one. Thank you.
The minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of October, pages 5 to 12 of your agenda. I have had 2 notifications concerning amendments to those minutes, and I'll ask those members who have submitted changes to speak. First of all, Councillor Mike Croker has submitted an amendment to the minute CO 43, reports of representatives. I understand that Councillor Mike Croker will wish to move an amendment to the minutes. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I get you to stand, please?
My apologies. Can you hear me though? Yes, basically the minutes as produced suggested that, or implied that an area action plan had been produced by the South Wales National Park, where in fact I believe one is in production at the moment, which is why the Councillor van der Kloot is on the task and finish group. So basically the amendment is to replace the first bullet point with the South Wales National Park was producing an area action plan regarding the future of the Horsham cement works, which proposed the site as an exemplar of sustainable mixed-use development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Chair. Very, very small change. It is just a spelling mistake, a small spelling mistake, but a totally different meaning has ensued from this. This is on page 8 of the minutes of the last meeting on the 13th of October, on the third paragraph regarding the drill hall. At the end of the paragraph, the words written down say it was confirmed that the cost of renovating and improving the building would be borne by the RBL, who would leave the hall for up to 30 years at a peppercorn rent. Of course, in fact, it should say who would lease the hall for up to 30 years at a peppercorn rent. Just a substitution of an S for the V. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noel. So there are two changes that we've been asked to look at. One was the reports of representatives and the change there that the area plan had not been produced, but the SDNP, South Downs National Park, was producing an area action plan. Are you happy that we change to that amendment? Thank you. And Councillor Noel's leaving instead of, or lease instead of leaving. Are you happy with that change? Okay. So I move that the minutes of the meeting on 13th of October, as amended, be improved as a correct record. So I'm happy to change that. We have done the declaration of interest. Or don't need one. We have no questions from the public, which moves us on to recommendations or no, announcements. I have two announcements. One, that there will be an extraordinary council meeting, as you know, after this meeting. I think it should be a relatively cheerful affair, hopefully to appoint Honorary Alderman. And so that will follow probably almost straight away or within 5 or 10 minutes. And the other announcement that I wish to make is about the regulations that seem to be different at different times concerning the care and protection of ourselves and other members of the public. So can I suggest that sorry? Oh, right. Sorry about that. Can I suggest that we actually adhere to the current regulations, which are to ensure that we wear masks except when speaking, that we try and observe social distancing, that we do observe hygiene. Hand washing is incredibly important to prevent exchange of virus, and also obviously when in a crowded room, we do leave space between ourselves and wear our masks. Now, at the moment, I've not heard anything further, although I understand there's an announcement being made tonight, but I think it will involve those simple effects of personal care, which are masks and social distancing, hand washing. If you can do a lateral flow test before meetings here, I think it would be sensible. Not everyone has access to lateral flow tests, but you can get them from the library and pharmacists. And I think sense in mixing is required. So I just wanted to say that we will be looking at those, and if there is anything that needs changing, then we will notify all members. I think that's right, and let them know what's happening. At the moment, as far as I'm aware, there has been no change to those rules. That really is all I wish to say. Friday was an extraordinary council meeting when our new council leader was elected. And so I'm going to call on the leader for his announcements. So, Councillor Jonathan Chow.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll let it off onto while I speak. Thank you. My glasses won't fog up, so I'll be able to read my speech, hopefully. So, Chairman and members and officers, I first want to thank the previous leader, Paul Clark, for taking on the leadership burden at such a challenging time. And Ray Dorr, an exceptional, professional and dedicated leader from whom I learned so much. I want to thank those who did come out for the council meeting last Friday. I know some of you came from the very edges of the district to represent your residents in the democratic process of electing a new leader, especially the chairman on his birthday. If that's not dedication, I don't know what is. I was in a hurry to get on with the job. And as Louise stated, clear leadership and vision. Like all politicians, I was wary of events in a transition period, especially during a pandemic. And we were drifting closer to Christmas and the long New Year break. It was also essential to give formal notice to some members of the old cabinet so they could step back. And I wish to thank them for their time and dedication to Horsham District Council. I needed to bring on a new, and in some cases younger, and some experience into the cabinet. So tonight, our new team is already in place, meeting officers, dealing with parish councils, residents, and the challenge of leadership. So what is our plan, our vision, our district? Our district is consistently recognised as one of the best places to live in England. And only last week, Horsham was quoted in the top 20. So we must be doing something right. I want to protect and enhance Horsham Town, our historic villages and beautiful countryside, not build all over it with imposed housing numbers that ignore the needs of our residents. The existing draft plan necessarily met the targets set by government through large-scale house building on greenfield sites. Recently, events have made this plan undeliverable. Natural England's position statement on water neutrality pauses all development in the district until a plan can be devised to mitigate the impact of southern water abstraction from our River Arun and Rother, and groundwater abstraction from Harden near Pulborough. Our consultants have already determined that there are no feasible options for the local authority to achieve 100% water neutrality on its own. This is a wider problem, which will require government assistance and funding. The enforced pause of development means that we have a unique opportunity to reset our housing numbers because the current government targets are clearly no longer achievable in the planned period. Michael Gove has already signalled that he plans to revisit outdated assumptions in the standard methodology for calculating housing numbers. Large-scale housing developments will be much more problematic and not feasible until there is substantial investment in large-scale mitigation infrastructure, which could take years. Therefore, the need of large-scale strategic sites such as those proposed at Adversane, Mayfield, Rookwood and Buckbarn or the 1,200 houses a year target now looks very unlikely. I have to say, I'm so pleased to make that statement. I'm sure most of you are as well. Using our current plan as a starting point, we have a golden opportunity to work very closely with the local communities and the parish and neighbourhood council. Our focus will be to address their local housing needs, aspirations and priorities. We must ensure that the housing we do deliver is high quality, eco-friendly, in design, and we must prioritise brownfield sites wherever possible. Also, we need to consider the real-world impact of planning delays. To businesses, to farmers and individuals, its social impact, and on investment, affordable homes, schools, and the recovery from the pandemic. We have to let our communities live, grow, thrive, and evolve. Otherwise, they become moribund and unsustainable. We need the energy and the enthusiasm of children and young people and the experience and wisdom of those in later years. This will help build our diverse and sustainable communities. We also need thriving business, a strong rural economy, more home working, and encouragement for our young people to live and work in the district. There will be help to preserve and enhance our culture, heritage, our environment, and its wildlife. That neatly brings us to the other important issue I want to mention briefly tonight: the challenges of ecological decline, carbon reduction, and climate change. I do not think anyone can now deny that these will be the dominating issues over the next 10 years as we try to hit targets and save our planet and our way of life. That's why our team will be putting the environment at the top of our agenda. So please bear with me as I repeat my announcement from last Friday, that now is formally to council and in the public domain. My first cabinet appointment, which I've already made, will reflect our environmental ambition, and I have asked an enthusiastic young farmer with a young family who is passionate about the environment. James Wright will be the cabinet member for Environment and Rural Affairs. James will be working closely across portfolios as there are no silos for the environment. To help James and the rest of the team deliver, the council will be making a further substantial investment of £1 million in our environment, delivering climate change initiatives and achieving carbon neutrality. I also want to announce a review of the district's resilience to climate change and exceptional weather events. I think we're all shocked at the disruption caused by Storm Arwen and the extreme weather exemplified this year in Germany and Belgium. The important issue of waste and recycling will now have a separate cabinet post, and I am pleased that Tony Bradman has agreed to take up this responsibility. I have had much lobbying from neighbourhood councils and Horsham town groups to have a town cabinet post because of the success of previous members. Christian Mitchell has agreed to champion the town, as James will champion the rural areas, but they will be supported by a team that will champion the whole district. Roger Noel, who has done a sterling job with leisure and culture, will work closely with James on Wild Horsham District. Tricia Utown will continue our highly valued work with housing and public protection. She will be joined by the widely experienced Liz Kitchen with community matters and particularly mental health. My fellow ward member Lynn Lambert will also continue to lead us along the tricky path of planning and development, where she's shown such a grasp of this most challenging portfolio. She will be ably supported by the experienced chairman of Planning North, Karen Burgess, and South, Tim Lloyd, both who will bring knowledge and life experience to leaders' meetings with Cabinet. I'm also pleased that this successful businessman and entrepreneur, Tony Hogburn, has agreed to take on the burden of finance and be my deputy. I wish him and his family a speedy recovery from COVID. I will personally retain property and economic development for the time being. There will be some further changes will reflect our ambitions and visions. So now, with clear vision and leadership, and we, and I mean everyone at Horsham District Council, will get on with our plan, our vision for our district. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chown, for that exposition of your position, and I wish you well. Are there any cabinet announcements? I'm not sure whether there will be at this stage. Yes, Councillor Knoll.
Sorry, I'll start again. Not really an announcement. Just in the spirit of Christmas, I just wanted to let you know that the Capitol Theatre is still functioning at full pace. Social distancing and mask wearing will be included in, will be checked on everyone entering. But of course, it's pantomime season. I just wanted to encourage you to join the chairman at the Aladdin's pantomime evening. And it's next week, isn't it?
This Friday.
Friday.
This Friday, yes. Sorry, this Friday. And so I'm not expecting you all to say, oh no, it isn't, but it is one of the best pantomimes around. So please come and support us and come and see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There are no other announcements, I take it. Chief Executive's announcement? There are none. Questions from the public? No questions relevant to the business of this meeting have been received. Which brings us on to item 6 on pages 15 to 18, recommendation from Cabinet from the 25th of November. The first 6A is update on the Council's financial position and midterm financial strategy update. Councillor Tony Hogben is unable to attend, as you heard. So therefore, I invite Councillor Jonathan Chown, Leader of the Council, to present this item and move the recommendation. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman. This report updates the Council's financial position under the ongoing impact from COVID-19. And in 2021, now the medium-term financial planning scenarios and assumptions that have changed since the budget was set for February 2021, and since the update in September 2021. The government spending review on the 27th of October gave us a little clarity on their approach to funding local government. There were plenty of warm words and an encouraging indication that 2022-23 won't be a difficult budget for us, but little information on which to project the later years of our strategy. The fair funding review and changes to business rates badly needed to be the upper tier, and poor authorities have been deferred again. This is a good news for Horsham District, albeit not local government as a whole. Even with the pressure from general and salary inflation, my current expectation is that we should be able to set a budget with a modest surplus next year, 2022-23, and in later years of the strategy, as funds fall away faster than income returns and the cost of items such as food waste collections come in, I remain concerned that the Council will not be able to continue operating all the services it does today. I draw your attention to the paragraphs in the report which remind us of the risks we face, including the fact that the full cost of carbon reduction are not yet included in the financial planning, even though today's announcements will help. This alone could considerably worsen the Council's financial position in the medium to long term. I hope the December settlement will be a 3-year settlement, which will help us plan more accurately over the medium term by the time I report, or hopefully Tony reports to you in January. One of the recommendations of this report is recommended to Council to increase the charges for garden waste from £42 to 44. I think we're still one of the very lowest in the county or in the country on that. We set most of our fees and charges for the budget in February. However, the timescales for billing our garden waste users means we have to make a decision now rather than later. The report also recommends Council add in 4 new revenue budgets to enable us to accept and then spend grant funding on specific services. The final recommendations ask Council to approve us joining the West Sussex Business Rates Pool in 2022-23, providing there is a safety net in place to prevent us being worse off than not joining. You may recall that 2 years ago we were in the pool, and this allowed West Sussex as a whole to benefit from retaining local generated business rates. But we disbanded the pool in the current year. due to the uncertainties of the impact on business rates of COVID-19. The full recommendations are on page 8 of your papers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chow. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Stewart, do you want to speak now or later? Later, please. In that case, I will open the debate and the first person who wants to speak. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Chairman. I shall raise the microphone as is now my way. And thank you to Councillor Chown for presenting the item. I appreciate that he is standing in this instance for Councillor Hogman. But I would note that the medium-term financial strategy was obviously prepared in advance of this meeting some weeks ago. It's been to Audit Committee and Cabinet, I believe. But earlier on, the leader made a very interesting announcement about the additional £1 million commitment to climate change and dealing with the threats of climate change in the environment. I wonder what impact that is likely to have on the medium-term financial strategy that is before us, because obviously that will not have been priced into that document, and we are looking at a projected surplus of about £1 million in the next year, 0.2 the year after, followed by potentially quite significant deficits. So I presume he would not make such an announcement without it being costed and prepared for. So it would be, I believe it would be helpful for members to know before they vote on this proposal, whether external funding has been secured for this, whether it's coming from reserves, or whether something's going to have to be cut, and if so, what that would be.
Thank you, Councillor Buffy. Any other comments that need to be made? I'm going to ask Councillor Ritchie, and then I'm going to ask to wind up, because it doesn't appear as though there's anybody else wishes to speak to. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. We're called to make the changes in the council's medium-term financial strategy and to deal with some particular recommendations. The medium-term financial strategy represents the best view we have on what the future holds. It will change over time. That is the very nature of forecasts as new information becomes available. And I'm sure Mr. Godfrey or Councillor Godfrey's question around the £1 million will get factored into these figures as we go forward. Indeed, whether £1 million is enough will be one of those questions that I'm sure is addressed. But today, I think the key point really is to approve the increase in the waste subscription service, for the very simple practical reasons that we need to get the bills out on time. And then the other point, which I think is most notable, is to go back into the West Sussex business rate support. And I'm pleased to see that's now back up on the agenda. So for all of those reasons and those mentioned by the leader, I should be supporting this resolution recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Coffey. The funding for this will come hopefully out of the reserves that we have, well, out of the surplus we're going to achieve at the moment. But also, if necessary, we will dip into the reserves, because reserves are for a rainy day. Literally, with climate change, it is a rainy day. So that's where we will be looking. And I think when I mentioned this briefly to the Director of Finance, I think her response, well, I don't think we're going to get away with £1 million anyway. It's going to be more than that. And there will be having to make some serious decisions, but we will do that in discussion amongst us all at PDAGs and in other committees where this is relevant, and better than try to do it off the back, on the hoof tonight.
You've got the recommendations on the Sorry, you've got your recommendations on page 15 and 16, and they are well set out. So can I ask all those in favour of approving the recommendations, please show. Thank you. Are there any against? Any abstentions? That is carried unanimously. So thank you very much for that that presentation. 6B, the Community Advice Partnership Agreement. And I'm going to invite Councillor Liz Kitchen, Cabinet Member for Community Matters, to present this item and move the recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think you all know the background to this, and the current Community Advice Services contract expires in the end of March in 2022, with a new service proposed to be in place for 7 years. The existing service is funded through our annual strategic grant budget and sets an annual budget setting. I think you'll all be pleased and reassured to know that this is run by Councillor Bed, as you declared an interest in this earlier, by the Citizens Advice Bureau, that are the current provider of this service, and supports residents with matters ranging benefits and consumer rights and the employment relationship and all family matters. This is a West Sussex wide thing, and as I understand it, all the districts and boroughs within West Sussex support it. So I hope it has been approved by Cabinet, and I'm hoping that asking you to make a recommendation, which is, like me, you don't all have printed agendas, so I'll read out so you all know what you're voting on. And that is to approve a budget contribution of £93,000 for up to 7 years, uplifted annually in line with Consumer Price Index, calculated on the anniversary of the agreement, subject to satisfactory service reviews in line with Horsham District Council's corporate priorities and the availability of Horsham District Council funding this. So, councillors, I ask you to approve that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Kitchen. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Billy Greening. Thank you. Which will open the evening to debate on this particular subject. Does anyone like to start the debate? Oh, yes. Councillor Brian Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Kitchen on return to the Cabinet to bring her vast experience to the front. I totally support this recommendation. I had the privilege of sitting on a joint scrutiny committee of all councils, boroughs and counties 7 years ago when this whole process was done. To me, initially, it seemed like a huge sum of money, which it probably does to a lot of us. In reality, it's fantastic value for money, in my opinion, in that the Citizens Advice Bureau do provide huge support to multitudes of citizens within the area. If they weren't there, we then would probably have to find, I'm guessing now, 3 to 6 staff, etc., and you can work out the costs there. So I believe it's good value for money. I believe they do a great job. They've got colossal expertise, which would take us ages to try to acquire. And I think, therefore, this should be supported. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Greening, would you like? You don't want to speak? Councillor Kitchen, did you want to say any more, or are you happy to let it rest?
Chairman, I don't think there's much more to be said. I'm just delighted that this is going through. Thank you very much.
I'll leave it on. Yeah, I'll leave it on. I can't remember whether to put a mask on first and take it off. All those in favour of approving the recommendation, which is on page 17, by the way, of the agenda, please show. Thank you very much. Any against? No. In that case, that motion is carried. Motion, well, it's 7 on page 19, which is a recommendation from committees, and the first 7A is the Audit Committee, provision of the external audit of the annual accounts. So I'll invite Councillor Stuart Ritchie, Chairman of the Audit Committee, to present this item and move the recommendation. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chairman. The Audit Committee have considered the appointment of auditors to this local authority at their recent meeting. The background is, or the recent background is, an organisation called the PSAA, Public Sector Audit Appointments, was created to en masse appoint auditors. There's a 5-year term for anybody who secures a contract. So 5 years ago, they put out their criteria. Quite a lot of their criteria was focused on cost, driving down cost, as opposed to quality. But what has happened in the audit market, particularly for the users of financial statements, is they are becoming less interested in cost and much more interested in quality. So PSAA basically made a poor choice in their criteria 5 years ago. And the consequence of it was that if you think of the leading accounting firms being the top 10, a number of them basically didn't pitch the local authority audit work, and which then had an effect that the work became concentrated on a relatively small number of firms, and those firms had too many audits to do with the staff that they had. The consequence of that for Horsham District Council is, in terms of audit lead, would be regarded as a tertiary audit, so not terribly important. And from an auditor's point of view, appointed by the PSAA on an en bloc contract, the auditor would just tell us when the audit was going to take place. And we know in recent experience that for some local authorities in this part of the world, the auditors aren't even going in until about January, following a March year end. One of the views that the Audit Committee took into account was they felt that the audit should be timely. I take the view in my accounting practice that the timeliness of financial statements is really important. So leaving over the annual audit to over 9 months after the year end is, to my mind, quite unacceptable. And we lose that sense of control if we go back into PSAA doing an en bloc appointment for the next 5 years. They will just simply appoint whoever they think has met the criteria, and we will be lumped with whatever firm that happens to be, with no guarantee over timeliness. Whereas if we take the alternative approach, which is to independently appoint an auditor, that can be one of our criteria, as well as quality, as well as price. For that reason, or for those reasons, the Audit Committee came to the conclusion that we should independently appoint our external auditor. Quality is assured for us because we can't just appoint any independent auditor. That firm has to have somebody on a central list who is a designated person for doing local authority audits. So the quality side of work is assured by having somebody with the relevant experience taking an assignment. But also the quality is assured by the interview process. There's an independent panel that is proposed to be formed, and I think there's sufficient luminaries in the Horsham District to help with that interview process before a recommendation is brought back. So I hope that explanation sets the context well, and also why the Audit Committee made the recommendation they have set out in the papers, and I'll move that recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ritchie. Do you have a seconder? Thank you very much. Councillor Gordon Dickinson. Do you want to speak now or later, Councillor? Or not at all, if necessary? Thank you very much, Councillor. The agenda item is actually on page 19 for those of you who have your agenda with you. Would anyone else like to speak to this particular subject? No. I missed that one, so yeah, I thought it might be. Are you all agreed then that we accept the recommendation of the council? Thank you. That brings us to item committee recommendation by the Standard Committee, which was made on the 1st of December at Standards Committee. And I'm going to ask Councillor Brian Donnelly if he would care to speak to this.
Thank you, Chairman. This is very much a nuts and bolts matter, an admin matter, just to bring it up to date. And I'd like to thank Montrose and officers for all the work and the Standard Committee in pursuing this. Basically, as you know, we've all got to have a members' code of conduct. And a small error was noticed in the previous one, which was by the government, not by us. The previous one, which the council approved in April this year, and circumstances felt necessary to amend ours, and we did a few adjustments to other matters in it as well to bring it up to date. Pecuniary interest is where the error was for those who are interested in these sort of things. I also point out that the LGA has produced some useful guidance, a copy of which is attached to Appendix B. It's rather colossal, but it does cover an area that's become far more prominent these days, as all of us would know, which is called that thing called social media, which is a particular parish council, which you all know, seem to use, or the citizens of that parish council seem to use massively to discuss each other in a way that probably people wouldn't want discussed. So it is a minefield, we all know it, but it's so easy just to slip up. And I think there's a lot of great stuff there, just quite a lot of paper to read, but there's a lot of good stuff there. A lot of you, of course, are pretty up to speed on standards anyway, but certainly when we get new standards, new members joining the council, which we will in 2023, it'll be a fabulous document for them to get into and to look into. We've got a brief summary of the changes shown in Appendix A. The question of personal interest in any business came up, and that's been sort of sorted out and clarified and spelled out. And I know that has applied to some members. Neighbourhood councils, a neighbourhood council did contact us about being involved in this because they saw neighbourhood councils were being referred to. It's not compulsory for neighbourhood councils. I think most have gone in. Councillor Peter Burgess gave us a very good, gave Councillor Diana van der Kloeg a very good update on that area recently. Neighbourhood councils, if they wish to adopt the code, they may do so. It's nothing compulsory about it. So in the circumstances, therefore, I do recommend to the council to adopt the council code of conduct of Horsham District Council as amended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donnelly. Is there a second after this motion? Councillor Diane van der Kloeg, thank you very much. I'm going to open this for debate. Should there be anyone wants to speak? Councillor Boffey.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and also thank you very much to Councillor Donnelly for presenting this item. I should probably start by apologising that I should have disclosed at the beginning an interest in that I am the Vice Chairman of Trafalgar Neighbourhood Council, which is why I'm making this point now. I've noted what Councillor Donnelly has said about the query from one of the neighbourhood councils around their inclusion. I do understand the expedience of the approach that's been taken to bringing the neighbourhood councils into this document in the definitions section, defining the neighbourhood councils within local authorities. And I do understand that it is for the purpose of this document, but I would just point out that this can sometimes be a slightly sensitive area because confusion does occur around the status of the neighbourhood councils versus other parish councils in the area. And in my own personal opinion, taking this approach does not help. The neighbourhood councils are not local authorities. They are not statutory bodies. They have influence and a voice, but they do not have authority. They are funded by a very modest grant from this district council of a few £1,000s for a year. Their clerks, whilst diligent, hard-working and effective, are not qualified as clerks are of other organisations. So I do have some concerns around, having a document that defines them as local authorities, and it would have been helpful if a little bit more caveating around that description and the very extreme nature of how, it's very specific nature of how they're being brought in could have been used, because it really is putting a square peg in a round hole. I fully appreciate the reasons why the approach is being taken, but there is a problem here. And I suppose my query to the monitoring officer, although it may be a little late in the day, is there any minor amendment that can be made later on? I don't wish to hold up the adoption of a very important code of conduct for this point, but it may be a small point, but it is significant.
Thank you very much. Councillor Donnelly, did you wish to reply to that?
Yes, I do, but I'll ask the monitoring officer to do so.
Thank you, Chairman. We have had some communication and correspondence with regard to neighbourhood councils, and particularly with this agenda item in mind. The purpose of adding this to the Code of Conduct is no differently for parish councils. It's not to change their status, it's not to give a status. It is simply to allow them that if they are to come to see as a monitoring officer with regard to standards, that this is a code of conduct that they have the choice to follow. So it doesn't bring them in, it doesn't change their status, and as Councillor Godfrey has just mentioned, there is no true legal status. They do influence with regard to representations that come before decision-making meetings and committees, but it just allows them to, if at any time in the future, and we are in the process of consulting with them and also offering training to them, that if they want to come under the jurisdiction and the remit of the monitoring officer and adopt this code of conduct that has come from the LGA, the model code of conduct that we have here as the principal authority, it allows them to do so. So we are going to continue to work with them going forward. The choice is for them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Godfrey, does that answer some of your questions?
Thank you, Chair. To a degree, yes. I suspect I am not going to be successful in getting any change in wording either now or after the fact, so this will probably be something that I will have to live with and seek to influence at a later date. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Were there any other questions? Councillor Burgess.
Oh, that's handy. I have to leave. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm asked around. I think we need to emphasise the very great importance of having a standards document which lays down to all of us, neighbourhood councils, parish councils, ourselves, county councils, the rules which exist. Because all of us are aware that throughout not only Horsham but elsewhere there have been a succession of councils which have had major problems. When I was the chairman of North Horsham Parish Council, we had problems. We know there is a particular council now which is having enormous problems. And I'd just like to sideline and say my thanks and all our thanks to our monitoring officer for the enormous amount of work she has to do to cover this. There have been other councils. It's destructive. So the clearer we have a set of rules which set standards, the better it will be. The only thing I would add on this, and I know the chairman, the standards chairman agrees with me about this. We need to encourage the government to give the standards committee and the council as a whole more power to deal with this. Currently, we can do virtually nothing. And it is really important because it takes up so much time, and much more importantly, as I found and others have found, it means that effective and useful councillors get so fed up with this, they just walk away. So I strongly support this new list of rules and would like to see it enhanced even further. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Are there any other? Councillor Ritchie.
Just like to add to what's been said already this evening on the subject. I think it's been said very well. This may hopefully offer Councillor Godfrey some comfort too, which is by following these standards, if a complaint arises, it's dealt with by the monitoring officer and her team. So it's dealt with by people who are professionally qualified to deal with these matters, and it's dealt with on a consistent basis. The thought of a parish council or neighbourhood council having to deal with a complaint themselves without that experience and that education, I find that really quite worrying. So I actually think this should be of comfort to parish councils and also neighbourhood councils.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Godfrey.
May I just make a point of clarification? I wouldn't want to give anyone the impression that I am opposed to the neighbourhood councils being within the ambit of the standards regime. I wholeheartedly support that. My only concerns are around the implications laid by the manner in which it's done, rather than the goal behind what's being sought to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. No other question. Councillor van der Kloot.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just first of all address Councillor Godfrey's point. The part of the code which mentions neighbourhood councils says as follows: for the purposes of this code of conduct, local authority, that's in inverted commas, covers county councils, district councils, London borough councils, parish councils, town councils, neighbourhood councils, fire and rescue authorities, police authorities, joint authorities, economic prosperity boards, combined authorities, and national park authorities. And we did insert the words neighbourhood councils there. And the wording is that it covers those bodies. It doesn't say that it is. It doesn't say that it is a local authority. And the idea behind it was that the neighbourhood councils are very important to us, and we do acknowledge that they exist, and we didn't want them to feel they'd been left out. And it was for that reason that they were included in that section, which was the most appropriate section to include them, so that they felt that they were included in this process and could adopt the code of conduct if they wish to do so, which of course they're not obliged to do. More generally, I just wanted to say a few words about, in support of the motion and recommendation. The Council did decide on the 28th of April to adopt the Local Government Association's Model Councillor Code of Conduct 2020 with a few minor amendments made by the Standards Committee. And the advantages of adopting the code, which were mentioned at the time, were first the development of a consistency of approach to conduct issues nationwide, and also at both district and parish levels, if also adopted by parish councils. And I am informed that since April, there has been 75% adoption by parish councils in Horsham district, with or without a few minor amendments. And that process is ongoing, and I believe that the neighbourhood councils, the three of them, are also looking at it with a view possibly to adopting it. This will make dealing with complaints quicker and easier, as we won't be trying to interpret and apply different standards. Another advantage which was mentioned at the time in April was that the LGA proposed to publish guidance, explanatory texts and case law to aid understanding and consistency of approach. And that guidance has now been published and is at Appendix B to the report to Standards Committee of the 1st of December, and it is some 42 pages long. Wills councillors will have looked at it in preparation for this meeting. It does merit careful study, as it is very enlightening about councillors' obligations under the Code of Conduct and about the declaration and registration of interests. Another advantage of adopting the LGA code is that it is reviewed annually by the LGA to ensure it is fit for purpose and applicable to changes in technology, social media and legislation. And here we have the first review. Councillor Donnelly has outlined the changes to be made by the LGA. A few small minor amendments were also made at Standards Committee on the 1st of December, and the final version was circulated to all members on the 3rd of December by the Monitoring Officer and Head of Democratic Services. It is that version of the amended code which is recommended by the Standards Committee to this Council for adoption. And I'm very happy to second Councillor Donnelly's proposal to support the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vandercliff. I take it there are no other speakers. Councillor Donnelly, did you wish to come back and say anything further?
No, I just wish to encourage everybody to support the recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
In that case, you have the recommendation on page 20 concerning the Councillor Code of Conduct amendment. Are you in agreement? Anyone against? And no abstentions. Thank you very much. In that case, the motion is carried. The second part, page 20, is the Code of Conduct complaints, new procedures. This was a subcommittee set up by the Standards Committee to look at this this problem, and I'm going to ask Councillor Vandercliff to Vice Chairman of Standards to present this item and move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. Under the previous agenda item, we saw the adoption of a revised Code of Conduct. In addition to a Code of Conduct, the Localism Act requires councils to have in place arrangements for investigating complaints about breaches of the Code of Conduct and for making decisions about those complaints. The Council does have such arrangements in place. However, whilst they are thorough and detailed, they were in need of review. The main criticisms are that the documents are firstly cumbersome, repetitive and confusing. The arrangements are contained in 4 separate documents, which are difficult to track down on the website, and they total 58 pages. Once you find the documents, if you're able to, they comprise guidance for members, which is 19 pages long, guidance for potential complainants, which is 18 pages long, procedure for local investigation, which is 12 pages long, and the complaints form, which is 9 pages long, so 58 in total. Secondly, the language is often obscure, inconsistent, and confusing. And thirdly, the process outlined is not always up to date with best practice. At the Standards Committee on the 8th of September, a working group was set up to finalise new procedures and arrangements for dealing with formal complaints. And I was honoured to be asked to chair that working group. And a thorough review was carried out by the working group in these last 3 months. The result is one single 25-page document containing guidance on bringing a complaint, the complaints form itself, and flowcharts. The procedure has been streamlined and accords with current best practice. It is written in clear, more readily understandable language and provides for the complaint to be dealt with in a timely, efficient and just manner. It is of concern that the volume of complaints, which Councillor Donnelly has mentioned this, they mainly relate to parish councils and mainly to one parish council in particular, take up an ever-increasing amount of the legal department's time and resources. This year, they are already approaching 30 in number, whereas there are normally 20 in a year. This proposed new procedure for complaints will help with distinguishing those cases where no action is necessary or which may be dealt with by informal resolution, from those which are in the public interest to fully investigate, determine, and where appropriate, sanction. The main differences in the proposed new procedure are highlighted in the report to the Standards Committee. In particular, there is greater emphasis on the complainant presenting their complaint in a concise and structured way, clearly stating the nature of the alleged breach of code and how the evidence submitted relates to it. This should improve on the current situation where the monitoring officer is often left to try and work out what the complaint is all about. The role of the independent person has been strengthened in line with recommendations from the Committee on Standards in Public Life to ensure their view is taken into account at the various stages. And also, where a formal investigation takes place, this will be followed up by the publication of a decision notice on the Council website in line with best practice. The Standards Committee met on the 1st of December and gave the document a final scrutiny. It was discussed and decided to preserve the status quo and not to go down the route of holding the deliberation of a formal investigation in public. This was considered to be not appropriate for considering highly sensitive matters, and there is no such legislative requirement. And it's also in line with the way evidence is considered by the judiciary and jury. Further, the presence of the independent person at the investigation, the formal investigation, is considered to be a powerful safeguard that all is conducted properly. I should like to thank the officers who worked so hard in preparing the revised complaints procedure and members of my working group, Councillors David Skip and Lynn Lambert, and the independent person who gave their wise counsel. The final amended version was sent out to all councillors on the 3rd of December. Chairman, I should like to move that Council adopt that new Code of Conduct complaints procedure in accordance with the recommendation of the Standards Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Donnelly, are you seconding that? Are there any, or is there anyone who would like to speak on this matter?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of the Standards Committee, but I have to say I welcome this when I read it. Anything that simplifies these things for our officers and indeed simplifies it for people looking for information is very welcome. I know one or two people in my ward have also been very troublesome, and well, they have, myself excluded, of course, and but they try to suck the district councillors in as well, don't they? Of course, they got pretty short shrift from me, as you can imagine, but you know, I welcome this very much, because there are so many websites where you go looking for information. Our government is one of them, and the Electoral Commission, you just wade through acres and acres and acres of paperwork online, just trying to find a simple piece of information. So I congratulate the officers and the committee on bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braddon, for that enlightening thought. Councillor Chair.
Well, all I can do is thank Councillor Van der Kloot for the work she's done on this and the presentation. That's one of the most eloquent things I've heard. It was long and detailed, but it was just to the point. So a good example for me as I start this new job. So thank you very much, Diana, and your team who helped you on what must have been a very challenging thing. I'm sure we've got other documents we can find.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other? Councillor Donnelly, did you want to say anything further?
Well, thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I believe this is a great piece of work. It was put together in a very short time, and thus the monitoring officer and her team, Councillor Diana van der Kloot, and the subcommittee, independent persons, parish reps, other parties who gave contributions, helped to move this forward, as I say, in a very short time, very thoroughly and in great detail. So well done to all them. As has been mentioned, it's worthwhile mentioning again that the previous code has been reduced 4 docs to 1, and it's half the size of the previous one. It's still quite a lot to read, but it is an improvement that we believe is going to assist us enormously. The role of the independent person, well, let me just explain, I probably have before that. The Standing Committee is made of 6 councillors. In terms of the constitution, the chairman of council will sit on it, and 1 cabinet member sits on it as well, and it's politically balanced. But we have also 2 independent persons and 2 parish representatives who are non-voting on the committee. The process of looking at complaints is, as obviously they come into the legal team from Horsham, so who the committee has delegated to the powers to respond immediately if it was considered that it was vexatious, and obviously very clearly there was no evidence whatsoever. If it is a serious case, it then goes to a subcommittee of 3 standards committee peoples. What's happened over the past year, which I think has strengthened it and made the system far more transparent, is not the right word, because the stuff that's been discussed, really it should be discussed in public and isn't. But to give confidence to the public and others is that the independent person now is consulted by the monitoring officer when a complaint first comes in. So you have a totally independent, neutral person looking at it, as well as the monitoring officer and her team. The other good point I think that this new one is bringing in is that at the subcommittees, which I think I said, the pros is made up of 3 standard committee councillors. The independent person will now sit on that subcommittee as well, which also should give councillors and the public hopefully more confidence that it has been, complaints have been properly and thoroughly investigated. So I think that's a very strong improvement to the system. The volume of complaints is quite substantial, and your legal department and monitoring officer are under huge pressures from this. For example, the parish just in the last couple of weeks, a citizen sent in 8 emails in a row, plus attachment, plus videos, plus Twitter, goodness knows what else. 8. The sheer volume. Anyway, we are looking at ways to attempt to slow this down. The big problem is, that goes back to, you might remember Lord Pickles, 2010 was it roughly? He reviewed the standards procedures in the country. And in doing so, he took the teeth away from the standards committee. Now, you heard me say it in the past, we don't have strong, if I use the word, punishments to get a message across that some people are acting erroneously. When I say teeth, previously, the result of the subcommittee hearing could be that a district councillor or a parish councillor could be suspended without allowances for 1, 2, 3, 6 months. That power was lost under the Pickles review, and all councils are exhorting government to bring it back in. Other things have obviously concerned government in the past 2 years, which has delayed matters. Anyway, you have it in front of you. We believe it's a huge change. We think the process is probably simpler. Monitoring officer and team are continuing to try to streamline and improve the system in order to try to minimize vexatious complaints, etc. Once again, I do thank them for all their hard work in that regard. And I therefore very pleased to recommend to you to support this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donnelly. The motion is on page 21 of your agenda to approve the adoption of the revised procedure in dealing with code of conduct complaints. All those in favour of approving the recommendation? Any against? Any abstentions? No. So that motion is carried. Thank you very much for that work that was done. Item 8 is reports of representatives from outside bodies. I haven't been notified of any. Is there anybody who wishes to say something? No. So we come to 9 members' questions on notice under Rule 4A 20B/25 to have received 2 questions on notice. Firstly, the question from Councillor Louise Potter. You have 2 minutes, Councillor Potter, in which to ask Councillor Jonathan Chown, Leader of the Council, your question.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In issuing their statement on water neutrality, Natural England has given us an opportunity to improve the current local plan. The Liberal Democrats welcome this and look forward to contributing to those changes. Although many will welcome an attempt to reduce the overall housing numbers, improve standards and increase the percentage of affordable homes, it brings much anxiety to residents that the new leader may try to put the previously considered site of Rookwood back into the plan. Fears are particularly heightened in light of the new leader's commitment to developing the site when he was the cabinet member for leisure and culture. Members will recall the unprecedented public opposition to the proposed development of Rookwood, and on removing it from the plan, the cabinet at that time assured us that they had listened and learned. Will the leader confirm that he will honour the commitment of his predecessors and rule out developing of Rookwood? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Rookwood was removed from the emerging local plan before Natural England issued their neutrality position statement. That statement highlighted the impact of water extraction in the south of our district on the habitat of a protected species and forced a pause on development. It is highly likely that this will result in significant reduction in our ability to meet centrally imposed housing targets. Under those circumstances, we will need fewer strategic sites rather than more. So there is no need to reconsider Rookwood in our local.
Thank you, Councillor Chown. Councillor Potter, you may ask one supplementary question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chown. Can you therefore confirm that you will not promote the development of Rookwood either for housing or other purposes that might reduce its amenity, so long as you are acting as leader of HDC, including outside?
Thank you, Louise. There's a few caveats there, aren't there? What I would do is you accepted what the previous leader and deputy chairman in their statement. I would just refer you to that statement by Councillor Horsham. And he commented the council is now under new leadership, again, even newer leadership, and enhancing our green spaces and listening to public consultation are vital in building trust in our leadership. Not allocating Rookwood in the local plan is the wish of the public at that stage. And following a year that has seen increased golfing activity, your councillors have listened. It is vital that we engage with local groups and found out how we can best use the council-owned land at Rookwood. We are committed and still committed to listening and engaging over the next 2 years before making any longer-term commitments on the future of Rookwood. I agree with that statement of the previous leader and deputy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chown. Councillor Potter, you may make a final statement, maximum of 5 minutes.
I don't have 5 minutes. I thank you very much for that, Councillor. I don't think residents will be completely at ease on hearing that, because obviously it doesn't confirm that it's not going to be developed outside of the local plan. But we look forward to seeing how things develop and to hopefully to account for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. The next question we received is from Councillor Martin Boffey. Councillor Boffey, you have 2 minutes in which to ask Councillor Tricia Utan, Cabinet Member for Housing and Public Protection, your question.
Thank you, Chair. At the Council meeting on the 13th of October, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Public Protection advised members of the number of affordable homes delivered in the district in the last 7 years, including those for rent. However, quite understandably at the time, when asked by me, no figure was immediately available for how many of these homes were for social rent. Please could the Cabinet Member now confirm how many new social rented homes were delivered in the Horsham district over that same period, being the last 7 years?
Councillor Utan.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Boffey. Horsham District Council has successfully delivered 1,584 new affordable homes since 2014. Of these, 952 have been delivered as affordable rental homes for households with an identified housing need on the Council's housing register, with the remaining 732 being delivered for intermediate housing such as shared ownership. To answer Councillor Boffey's question, none of the 552 affordable rented homes were classified as socially rented homes. However, affordable rents are broadly speaking set at 80% of market rent levels compared to 60% for social rented homes. Affordable rents are capped at the relevant local housing allowance rate for an area, meaning that they are affordable for lower income families that may need financial support through housing benefit or the housing element of the universal credit in the same way socially rented homes would be. It is also worth mentioning that there have been a number of changes in the sector since 2015, which have seen a focus on low-cost home ownership options being funded, annual rent reductions between 2015 and 2019, and the introduction of affordable rent as an affordable tenure. The purpose of this was to enable registered providers or housing associations to not only provide a suitable, safe and affordable home to those that need them, but also to generate additional income to be reinvested in the development of affordable housing. Our continued high delivery numbers are testament to this. I'm really proud of our track record in this area in securing so many affordable rented homes and providing a solution to those with a housing need on our housing register.
Councillor Boffey, you have a supplementary question.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have a supplementary question. I wondered if I might be able to move straight to the, still have the my final comment. Would that be acceptable?
I'm going to ask Councillor Utan, she might like to say something further.
I don't see why not. I mean, if you're happy with it, Chairman.
I'm perfectly happy, yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you kindly for your response to the question, much appreciated. And I would just note that this council, when it passed its resolution to look closer at social help for rented for the future, obviously showed a commitment to the importance of this as a scheme. And I think as we move forward to that, it's important to know where we are starting from, be that good or bad, so that we have a clear view as to where we need to move forward to future. And I look forward to working with Councillor Utan in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boffey, and to the Cabinet members who have replied to the questions. That brings us to urgent business, and I have no urgent business. So I'm going to close this meeting and suggest that we have a break before the following extraordinary council meeting. I would think 10 minutes to allow the other people to attend and for councillors to have a comfort break. So thank you very much.
thank you very much for continuing to attend this meeting. I know that one or two people have gone, but it's great to be here on what I think is a very joyous occasion. So just to repeat for those people who are here, who weren't here before, please note where the fire exits are. There's one over there and one down there. Make sure your mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent. And we have an audio recording of the meeting, and that'll be put on the council's website. And please, when people are speaking, if they could put their microphones on and get a nice red button. Apologies for absence is as before, and I'm not going to go through those again. And I take it that no one has an interest to declare in respect to tonight's agenda. So, Honorary Alderman, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to confer the title of Honorary Alderman on two former members of this council in recognition of their eminent service to the council and the community in pursuance of section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972. And I'm going to take each nomination in turn. So I think that I hope I'm not going to surprise Councillor Kitchen, but I'm going to call upon Councillor Liz Kitchen to move that the title of Honorary Alderman should be conferred upon Mrs. Eve Morshell.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, Mrs. Morshell, ex-councillor Morshell. I should say there was a bit of a thought this evening about there was a scramble for people who should propose you, and whether it should have been myself or Councillor Christian Mitchell who had the foresight to remind us that we had, I believe, forgotten to have you nominated at an earlier stage. So it's good to see you here with your family and your friends. Eve, I'm not going to mention dates because I can't remember them. They're all so long ago now. But I have to remember when I was first elected to councillor, there were two rather formidable ladies on Horsham District Council at the time. And we had a lovely council chamber in those days, so things were even more formal than they are now. And I, as a newbie, turned up and was told roughly what to do and how to behave and where to go and all that, which was great fun, actually. It was enormous fun. But the two ladies who were really, really good to me and the other new people in that time were Barbara Palmer and Eve Morshell. And they were very good days, and I thoroughly enjoyed working with you, Eve, and thank you very much for all that I've learned from you over the years that I worked with you. So that was great. The reason I think that we're all so pleased to be here tonight and to be honouring you to be an alderman of Horsham District Council, which is a relatively new area for us to be in. But you, I believe, in both the urban council and the rural council were a member of before they merged together and became Horsham District, and you had the honour of being chairman of both, which is quite an accolade as I understand it. On your time on the district council, which is the only one I can really talk about, I believe you were chairman of virtually all the major committees. Because don't forget, in that days we had committees and we didn't have cabinets and things, and the chairman of the council was basically the leader of the council, and so you had all that. But as I recall, you had all the aggro with others at the time of the redevelopment of the town centre, which we all know now has its huge success. So well done, you, because I think we all remember, I think somewhere like Rookwood was fairly minor with the complaints that you all got. So that was incredible. You went ahead and had the courage to do it. Not to mention the decommissioning of St Mark's Church, which had to go all the way up to the House of Commons to get that done. So that was absolutely superb. And of course, your leading role in getting a swimming pool with a roof on it for Horsham, which was really quite an achievable event in that stage for what was, and that's at that time, a relatively small town. So on behalf of the people of Horsham, I'd like to thank you for all that you've put into it, and have absolutely no hesitation in proposing you to be an honorary alderman of Horsham Council.
Thank you very much, Liz. I'd like to call upon Councillor Tony Bradnam to second the motion, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have great pleasure in seconding the proposal to confer the title of Honorary Alderman of Horsham District on former District Councillor Mrs. Eve Morshell. Of course, I did not serve on this council with Eve, but I have known Eve for many, many years and have long admired her aptitude for anything which is to the benefit of others. Since leaving the council, Eve has continued to play an active role in the community, helping others through various charities, and she has certainly been a pillar of my local church in Nuthurst. Eve did not put her feet up and relax. She's been and is an active senior citizen of this town. But Eve wasn't always a senior citizen. When she was a member of this council, Eve was an outgoing, vibrant young woman who had a sense of purpose and a vision for the future. It's Eve and those who went before her and those who have served since that have made our district what it is today. I'm really pleased to see this honorary title given to you, Eve. It's much deserved, and I offer you my sincere congratulations. You may now drive your sheep through the Carfax. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak? Councillor Vickers.
Yes, very briefly, Chairman. Thank you. Eve was chairman of the Establishment Committee when I first became a councillor here in Horsham. That, for people who don't know what the establishment means, it was the Personnel Committee. She was always very kind and supportive to me, and I have no hesitation in supporting her becoming an honorary alderman. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vickers. And any other members? Councillor Christian.
Chairman, only really to echo exactly what Councillor Kitchen said, but although I'd proposed and put together the nomination for you, Eve, but I wholeheartedly endorse everything that's been said tonight. It's very well deserved. But I think you're right that please do the work so closely with the council. I should speak first, but it's well deserved, and I know that you're still serving the community hard, and I'm looking forward to hearing your reminiscences and time on the council, because I still think there's probably still a lot we learn from those that have served before us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mitchell. Anybody else? I'd just like to say that I've known Eve for quite a long time, and I must say that I'm impressed that you're still working hard down in Aishcourt Drive on the duck pond down there, which has always been a bit of a problem for me getting anybody to do anything down there. So yeah, I'm sure you're doing a grand job with the residents. Anyway, it's been moved and seconded that the title of Honorary Alderman should be conferred upon Eve Morshell. Would all those in favour of the motion please show by raising their hands? Thank you. By passing this resolution, councillors now conferred the title of Honorary Alderman upon Mrs. Morshell. And I'm going to come and present you with a badge and certificate, and then you'll be able to address us, which I'm waiting for with bated breath. Thank you.
Can I thank Liz and Tony very much for their kind words, and from Christian, and I can't remember her name. I'm very sorry, but the lady over here, I ought to. But the brain, you know, it's getting on a bit in years now. Anyway, thank you very much for all your kind words. I don't deserve them. And I am sure that my family who've been listening will have something to say about all this, because they were quite young when I was on the council, and I didn't spend as much time with them as I should have done. I really believe that. But how did I start off coming on the council? Well, I was teaching a special group of girls at what was Forest Girls' School in those days, and they were going to leave school when they were at Easter. You could do that in those days. And I was told, just do what you want with them. And I thought they should know something about their own town and how it was run, etc. And eventually we came to a council meeting in the old urban council, which was where Bill's is now. And it was me that got hooked, not them, but me. And I used to go and listen to the debates. We could only go to the full council meetings. And I really got so interested in the town itself, not thinking that I would ever have anything to do with it. Well, of course, the political party noted my interest, and so there I was. I think, excuse me, my sight is very poor now, and I have to write in big writing on black to make sure I can read it. What happened soon after I became council was the reorganization of councils, and it was a bit of a shock. We knew that we would be Horsham Urban Council with Horsham Rural Council around us, and we were quite happy with that. But when the announcement was made, we found Chantry Council, that's the bit on the south, was added to us as well. They were not happy. They were really not happy, and they came kicking and screaming to us. Made all sorts of presentations. They wanted to join the coastal group. So we didn't start off very well. We tried very hard, and I think it took about 10 years for it really to settle down. Well, all this happened from, should I mention dates? 1967 was when I came on the council. Anyway, we tried to learn about each other's problems, etc. It was a very interesting time, but we really felt we were treading on eggshells all the time. I do hope it's improved. I'm not sure, but please do work together. It's what you should be doing. We were very lucky, although we had to go through three, they weren't chief executives then, but three chief officers of councils, three finance people, and so on, and sift out. And there was arguments about ours is better than yours, etc. We eventually got there. And after a while, we had Martin Pearson. He was our chief executive eventually. We had David Gould, who was our finance officer, and we had another person whose name I can't remember as a solicitor. Now those three had great foresight, and they really made Horsham what it is now. It was their foresight, planning, and investments in the town that really made Horsham what it is now. I mean, apart from having so many coffee shops, I remember we had an awful lot of building societies at one time. The Carfax was full of building societies. And we had one coffee shop in West Street. And we said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have more coffee shops? Do be careful what you wish for. But anyway, we went on from there. They were very wise people that helped us. I think the most frightening experience, and I can say it was frightening experience I had, was when I had to go and meet the local amateur organisations and tell them that we were going to knock down their very old Capitol Theatre and put Marks and Spencer's in its place. When you can imagine, they were going to burn their bras, you name it. It was, I really almost worried about getting home safely. And you know, it was very strange. There was no officer to come with me that evening. Can't think why. I don't think there's much more that I can say, except that I decided that I would retire from the council. In about 1995, there was an election then, and I thought I'd spent 28 years by then on the council. My husband had retired, and I thought it was time I spent time with him. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. We only had a year, but that doesn't make any difference. That was a great year that we had, so I was very pleased that I had not stood for election that year. But I think to myself, he would enjoy tonight. I'm sure he would. I mean, David knew my husband, and I think they enjoyed each other's company. So thank you very much, everybody, for giving me this honour. I feel I don't deserve it because I've enjoyed myself too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve, for that wonderful reminiscence. And you could do very well back in the council chamber. I now call upon Councillor Paul Clark to move that the title of Honorary Alderman should be conferred upon Godfrey Newman.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a great pleasure for me to propose Godfrey Newman for Alderman of the Council. As we can see in 30 years on the Council, in the listings that we have in front of us, that in fact Godfrey served on almost all of the committees of our council in turn. I would like to thank Godfrey for all his hard work and efforts over the past years. He worked really hard, and he remained and remains even-tempered, open-minded, and apparently quite easygoing in my experience of him. I personally want to thank Godfrey for his kindness to me as a new councillor when I started off in this council, despite being one of the other lot. And also would like to thank him when at the beginning of this I was going through a hard time with cancer in the family, and Godfrey was a huge help and support at that time when we talked about it. I'll keep my comments short to allow others the opportunity to wax more lyrical than I possibly could. I know that the seconder of this motion will have much more to say about Godfrey, but I have absolutely no hesitation in recommending him and proposing him to be an alderman of this council.
Thank you for that, Paul. And I'm now going to call upon Councillor Louise Potter to second the motion.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, it's a real privilege to second this nomination for Godfrey to become an honorary alderman. Thank you very much to Paul for suggesting it a few weeks ago. I really appreciate that. It's very much deserved, and I'm delighted that he's been able to join us this evening with his family. And I'm just going to say a few words. So Godfrey first moved to Horsham from Woking in 1990 with his wife Val and their 4 children, Eleanor, David, Debbie and Imogen. He quickly became involved in campaigning for the Liberal Democrats and was first elected as a district councillor in 1991, serving as a forest councillor alongside Pat Rutherford. Godfrey served as chairman of the Policy and Resources Committee during the Liberal Democrat administration from 1995 to 1999. And during that time, he supported the replacement of the Old Park Recreation Centre with a bowling alley and nightclub, recognising that there were not enough facilities for young people in the town. Godfrey's priority was always to his residents, who he represented. He regularly attended meetings at Forest Neighbourhood Council to keep on top of the pressing issues in his ward, and was well known and admired for thoroughly investigating the issues that were brought to him and for pressing for action to be taken. As a councillor, Godfrey was particularly sharp when it came to planning matters, and perhaps most notably led the fight against the development of Mugridge Field. In 2010, Godfrey stood as the Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate for Horsham. He finished second with 32% of the vote, a percentage that those of us who have followed have so far failed to come close to. Outside of politics, Godfrey was first a medical rep and then a chemistry teacher, teaching at Tambridge in Horsham and ICC in Crawley. After he retired, he became a governor at the Forest School. I was fortunate to work alongside Godfrey for my first 2 years as a councillor and learnt a great deal from him. His passion for the role was abundantly clear, and I know it was with great reluctance that he stood down. We miss his calm presence and his dry sense of humour, but we wish him the very best in his well-earned retirement.
Thank you, Louise. Are there any other councillors who may wish to say something? Brian.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Godfrey. Lovely seeing you again. I first met Godfrey, seems like decades ago. We were on many committees together, often with the same opinion and often pushing for the same point of view. I always found Godfrey totally fair, level-headed, and very interesting to work with. And his commitment to the people of the Horsham district was undoubted. He has a whole lot of characteristics which added a lot of value to the council. His calmness, sensibility, his fairness, his dedication to work. He worked hard for the council and the community all the time. He did experience some hard times in his life, as we know, and of course, unfortunately, ill health has taken him out of the council in the past few years. I should mention one of his great contributions to the council was ensuring that the council minutes were spelled correctly. Might have had something to do with being a teacher, I don't know. But he was certainly a great quality on the council, an asset to all. More often than not, non-political, as I said already, working for the community as a whole. And I think that his award of the title of Alderman is more than correct. I think he set a standard of how a councillor should behave, and I certainly enjoyed working with him. His humour, his common sense, his calmness, I always appreciated, and I thank him for that. And I certainly would recommend everybody to support this alderman.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Kitchen.
Oh dear, you can tell I've been around a long time, can't you? I'm on my feet again for this one. But I couldn't let the evening go by without agreeing with the membership for you, Godfrey, and it's lovely to see you again. We've worked together over a number of years and quite often have disagreed, but we've always agreed to disagree. But I think my main memory of you will be as a choir boy. I've always enjoyed your singing at the civic service, which you've done awfully. But I'd also like to thank you for finding a choir for my daughter's wedding in Rusper a few years back. And much more recently, you came and sang at my husband's memorial service. So I have to thank you for that as well. But I've really enjoyed working with you on council and I'd like to thank you for all the help that you've given to all of us over the years.
Councillor Billy Green.
Thank you, Godfrey. It's lovely to see you're such a kind and decent person. I'd like to just say that the first time I met you was not in this council chamber, it's when you were teaching me at Tambridge House School, and it's obviously your success as a teacher is judged by your students. So it's wonderful to see you this evening, Godfrey. I'm so glad that we could honour you in this way. You're an excellent, decent, kind person and wonderful councillor, and we've all learned a lot from you. So thank you very much.
Councillor Beers.
Thank you, Chairman. As the only Lib Dem councillor here tonight who served when we were in control, albeit only for the last 9 months of that period, it's nice to see Godfrey here, who spent the entire 4 years as part of the group that controlled how we ran the council for that time. And I still think we were a very successful 4 years term of council. You were a councillor for 30 years. Harold Wilson said a week is a long time in politics, so God knows what 30 years is. I think being made an alderman is a very small prize for such a long period of dedicated public service.
One other, John.
Good evening, everyone. First, John. Yeah, I think it's just worth saying that in the age of COVID, I only got to meet Godfrey this evening for the first time, with the by-election just in the rush that it was. But I know that I represent the Forest Ward, but according to everyone on the doorstep, I was just fulfilling Godfrey's seat and his replacement. So I just want to say that I hope that I can fill your shoes in the ward and on the council in the future, and to thank you for laying the groundwork that you have. Thank you very much.
Nobody else, so that's fine. I just want to mention one thing, Godfrey, and that's your support of Horsham Football Club. I know you've got the scarf, but you have been a very keen, devoted follower of the club, and you spoke for them at several occasions when we were looking at the moving the pitch. So thank you very much for all you did there.
It's been moved and seconded that the title of Honorary Alderman should be conferred upon Godfrey. Would all those in favour of the motion please show by raising their hands? Thank you. By passing the resolution, Council has now conferred the title of Honorary Alderman upon Godfrey Newman. And I'm going to come and present you with your badge and certificates. I think Godfrey would be very happy to make a speech tonight, but I think
he's taken the honourable way, and we have to just acknowledge him and thank him for everything that he's done. So well done, Godfrey. I said I thought it would be a delightful evening, and it has been. That concludes the business of this meeting. Thank you for coming, for taking part, and for what you said. And there are some mince pies somewhere at the back, and probably